Welcome to the Landscaping Podcast. My name is Joel Barnett and I'm your host. And today's episode is the 19th of the Instagram lives that we've done, and where I'll get a question box up during the week for everyone to put a question up, and I'll answer the questions on this episode, which is live every Sunday at 8:30 Eastern Standard Time, and then released as a podcast episode on the Thursday. The first question is from Steve Nyland, and he said, "Will you ever put ads in the middle of your podcasts? Please don't." So I'll never say never, but it's extremely unlikely that I'll do that. I've had a couple of offers from people. I've never got to the point where we talk about money, and also the Buzzsprout, who are the podcast host who host the podcast. So that's where I upload it. I can just click a button and I could earn it's $85 a month, and they put the ads in, so I wouldn't have to do a thing other than click the button. But I hate ads in podcasts, and they're not going to earn enough to make it worthwhile. Like, if I'm going to inconvenience the audience enough that that's going to have ads in it, I'd want to make a fair bit from it. And that's the reason I gave to the companies that offered to sponsor episodes or the podcast, that they wouldn't, whatever they would have to pay me for me to put an ad on would be more than they would get back in value. So it's not even worth doing. I especially hate, there's a podcast I listen to and they bang on about how they would talk about, I was listening to a podcast the other day, and it was all they were talking about was whatever course or marketing thing they were trying to sell. And they said they didn't like listening to ads on it. And then later on in their episode, they talk about the coaching course that they offer, and it's like a 3.5 minute ad. So it's like they don't listen to themselves at all. But yeah, it's like I fast forward through ads whenever I can. So yeah. So I don't think he would make that much money on it. So is it really worth doing it? Yeah, not for me. So I'd never say never, but yeah, extremely unlikely that I'll do one. I certainly wouldn't be. Yeah, I don't think I'd be reading them myself either. Simon from the Planted Space said, "You talk a bit about not being very profitable. What's causing that?" I'll probably good list 15 things I reckon that are causing that. So it's not just one main thing. Otherwise, I could just change that one thing. So it's a lot of things, and that's also why you see builders collapsing, going out of business that have been in business for 20 plus years. So one of the things that causes it is the price increases. So like, I'm pretty certain that the profit struggles will be turning around in the coming years. Or coming months even. So there's one job we've got coming up, which I quoted 12 months ago. But other than that, I'm pretty confident we'll do pretty well on all the jobs we've got coming forward now, because I've just sort of changed the way I've done things. So that'll solve the material increases issue that has caused it. And there's things like just the time it takes to do things. I don't allow enough time for my employees to do the work. So I'll think how long I will take and do it. So I'll allow a lot less than that, and then that's still too fast for how long it takes us to do some things. When you're working for new designers, if you don't know much about their plans, you can't pick out all the details in them. So there's things in there that you might not have picked up during the quoting stage, so it takes longer. So yeah, you haven't allowed for it in terms of materials, but it also takes longer. So, and I don't, if I miss something in a quote, that's my fault. It's not the client's fault. So I'm not going to get them to pay for it. So that's another thing there. And probably not allowing enough in my, even just the hourly rate. So there's a question later on, the next one actually, about the hourly rate and how much you should be charging. So I probably wasn't charging enough. So it's a combination of not charging enough and also not allowing enough time. It's a double whammy. So yeah, that's something I worked on. So because there's just so many different things that, so many different expenses that you don't think of. Like even just the accounting, I don't like, because I've got a spreadsheet of everything, of all the costs throughout a year, so that you can then divide that by 220 to work out your daily rate you need to charge. And that's something I haven't added to enough as unexpected expenses come up. But there's things that aren't in there, like just your accounting. I just got the accounting done, and that was $2,500. So that's the same every year. Plus, there's other little bits and pieces that they are on. And there's just expensive things, like the trucks are expensive. That not only their repayments but the insurance for them. So yeah, it's just fuel as well. So not just materials but fuel. Like I think my fuel price has doubled on what it was 2 years ago. So if you're not updating it in your spreadsheet that you're working out your hourly rate on, then you're not going to be doing too well on projects. And then the thing that exacerbates that issue is if you booked out for 9 to 12 months in advance, like I am, changes that I make now I won't feel them for 9 to 12 months. So it's just a combination of little things like that, things that I realized a while ago that they're only just starting to come in now. So yeah, I've got no doubt that it's going to be changing, but yeah, that was the reason why I wasn't making enough money on the project. So I have another question here. Yep. Lloyd Sharp said, do you try designing into jobs you want to do for the first time, like in situ concrete? Yes, I do. So that's one of the benefits about doing your own designs is you get to try different things. And that's also something I'm looking to do going forward is look after the sponsors who look after us for the garden show so we can design their products into the gardens and use their pavers. Because the good thing about that is I'm not like I chose products for the garden show that I absolutely love. So then I get to use them going forward. So it's not like I've just been offered a product and I'm going to be pushing that. And even though I don't like it, like the stuff I'm using, there's a fair chunk of it I'm using at my own house as well. So, yeah, it's good stuff that I'm promoting. And then luckily I can design that in. I also cleaned out my shed the other day because we've kept all the timber that we used at the garden show. So I've had to neatly arrange that so we can get a vehicle back in the shed. But I've got a lot of pavers there that I've kept. So I've got a list of them so I could design in them into upcoming projects. But yeah, in situ concrete is something I'm wanting to do more of, and I'll be doing some of that at my place. So I'm going to be doing letterbox, which I'll talk about later as well. So that's something that's kind of unique. I think I got the idea from Lily Sabo like ages ago. I think it was before I spoke to her. I'm pretty sure. I don't think it was a number she did. I think it was the word number, which is probably the same as what I'm going to do because that's what I was initially going to do. But yeah, that's one of the great things about designing and building is that you get to design and build it yourself. So if you're just a designer, you could design something and then someone else has to build it and you think, it looks okay, but it's not how I thought it was going to look. But if you're designing it and building it, then you've got complete control over it. Got no plans to do the type of in situ concrete that landscapers are doing. They're doing some insane stuff like the curved bench seats with a backrest on an angle, just insane stuff that they're doing. I'll just be starting with steps and barbecues and letterbox numbers. But they wouldn't have started just by doing the insane stuff that they're doing. So you got to start somewhere. So that's where I'll be starting. But yeah, definitely looking to do that. And we've actually got at least 3 projects that are booked in that have got it in there. So it's something I enjoy doing. So we'll be doing a lot more of. Next question is from Anonymous. Said, do you think $90 an hour plus GST per person is too high for a landscaper to charge? Even though I'm registered domestic builder limited, have trucks, machinery, utes, insurances, etc. So it's coincidentally that's just about the same as what I charge. I think we worked out it was less than $1 an hour different because I just have a daily rate. But it also depends on how many hours you're allowing per day. So a day rate is probably a better way to work it out rather than per hour. But you should be charging as much as you need to charge. So it doesn't matter what other people are charging. It does matter a little bit. You don't want to work out that all your material, like if you've got, 3 work Lamborghinis, your expenses are going to be high. So maybe you might need to be a bit more resourceful with where you're spending your money on work-related things. So it's good to know what other people are charging, but as long as you've bought vehicles that are good for the business and you're not in a fancy factory with a swimming pool, got bells and whistles on there. As long as you're not going over the top with things like that, and you're just running a normal business, you should just worry about what your expenses are and be able to recover your overhead and pay your employees and make some profit as well. So, but yeah, when like this question says, registered domestic builder limited. So obviously doing things properly there. So you've got the you got to go through the contracts and do all that business and get domestic building insurance for the client. Whereas a lot of landscapers aren't registered at all, so they're doing works illegally. So there's a lot more work involved with doing that. Trucks, like I mentioned, and machinery, like I mentioned before. There's not just the cost of them, but not just the maintenance, but the insurances as well. And then you've got all sorts of hidden costs like work cover, and there's just so many different things when you start to look at all your expenses. But you need to know those expenses and know what your numbers are so that you can charge accordingly. I've got no doubt there's people charging a hell of a lot more than $90 per hour per person, because I've heard what some project managers are on in Melbourne. So they definitely have to be getting charged more than that, because everything is more expensive there as well in terms of the like rent for a shed and that sort of thing. So it's pretty reasonable. And I found that it can be a tricky thing being in business for a long time, because you start out your business on a certain hourly rate like I did. Like I used to be charging $550 a day per person when I started. So if you're not continually looking at what your expenses are and changing and updating them, then you're going to be burning yourself, which I've done as well. Because so like if you're starting now, you're probably going to be it's less of a shock to be charging what people are charging now. But whereas if I was starting, because I'm an older person, I was charging a lot less, so it feels like it's more, if that makes sense. So I think that's definitely it's certainly not too much anyway. And like I said, there'll be people charging a lot more, but work out what your expenses are and charge based on that. But just make sure that you're more likely to forget to add things to your expenses than add too much. So you're better off charging more than you think you need to, so that you'll recover those things, that like even just mistakes on jobs, to cover that. Mitch Custurian said, have you done anything different to start attracting your own design leads as opposed to projects from other designers? Not yet, but that is something I've been looking at doing. So I got an email from Google AdWords saying that if I spend $500 on AdWords, I'll get a free $500. So that's something I'm going to look at doing. But I just need to get things under control still. We've got probably 4 to 6 weeks worth of design work already in front of us. So there's no point in bringing in more design work that we can't do just yet, because a lot of people don't want to wait that long. So I'm just doing it organically at the moment. And then if we start to get a bit shorter, then I'll pull the trigger on that. Because if the dream scenario would be to put on another designer, but I'm not looking to do that just yet. So I'm not going to pull the trigger yet. But if I'll get the shed or the office all set up and running so that we can have designers working out of there, then I'll probably pull the trigger on doing that AdWords campaign. But then another thing I could do is do the AdWords campaign and then put my prices up for designs, so that I'm not too concerned if people aren't going ahead with those prices. And then if I find that nobody's going ahead with like let's say I put my price up by 25%, if I find that nobody's paying that, and everyone, like I'm getting a lot of inquiries but nobody's going ahead with it, then I can just put them back and work out what the market is willing to pay for our designs. So there's a few different reasons to want to do that, but I haven't been doing anything yet. But I've knocked back a lot of design work prior to now. So the work has always been coming in little bits and pieces, but now we're just starting to take on a lot more of it, and I'll probably put a bit more work into advertising when we're ready to start taking on more. Greenco Landscapes said, what trends do you think we'll see in the future of landscaping. I reckon there'll be a lot more sustainability and intelligent types of landscaping and landscape design. So doing things that are more environmentally friendly and got a lot more permaculture, and also incorporating things much like what Peter Donegan does with his biodiversity, and I can't remember what the other thing he does is, but doing things that don't necessarily meet the cliche of the way like a sustainable garden is supposed to look. So there's just incorporating things like that into the garden, but making it look like a normal garden would without those type of things, if that makes sense. So doing the same thing, like we're having edibles within the gardens so that they're just a part of it. So not necessarily having an edible section, but incorporating it within the overall design. In terms of hardscaping and softscaping, I don't know which one is going to change to like increase more than the other. I think that would be sort of designer based. And yeah, I think the prices of stone went up a little bit because of delivery, but I think they're starting to come down a little bit. Granite works are certainly prices have come down a little bit, so yeah, I don't think there's going to be any shift towards using local stone over imported or anything like that. But yeah, that's all I could see. That's the main thing I can see anyways. People doing a lot more sustainable work, a lot more natural kind of work, and incorporating it into the environment that the garden's in, and doing it in a way that's not in your face and obvious, and sort of meeting the cliche of those types of designs. Let me just see. I've got another question, I think. From Lloyd Sharp. How do you approach variations once on site? Do you have a contract via quote to refer to, or try to do an hourly situation, or just get work done? What would you recommend? So with our contracts, I think it's if the variation is less than 2% of the total contract, you don't have to do a variation. You can just get like an email or a text message or just something in writing to say that the client agrees to it. But if it's over, I could be wrong with that percentage, but I'm pretty sure it's right. If it's over 2%, then you have to complete a variation document. But I don't do them for our project. But and there's sometimes I will just do the work and then invoice the client if they've asked for something. But I try not to do that because you don't want any surprises. And I'll also try and invoice, like if there's I've gone blank and forgotten the word. Now I need to click on that to see what the word is. If there is a variation that comes up, you want to invoice for that variation at the next invoicing stage, so that there's no shock by doing it at the end. That's definitely if you haven't got it in writing anyway. But so the sooner you can invoice for it, the better. So not only does that help with the cash flow, but then at least that client knows exactly how much they're spending, so there's no surprises at the end for them. But yeah, there's something like I actually have been meaning to do it for a project we're working on at the moment. I've had it written in my diary for I think 4 days this week to work out this price variation for the client. And I know that they're going to go ahead with it regardless, but I just want them to know how much it's going to cost, so that everyone knows what's happening. So yeah, I'll be doing that as soon as I finish this. I'll be doing that. But yeah, the more documentation you can have about it, the better. So it's not only just to cover yourself, but just so that the client knows exactly what's happening. Because, like they might ask you to do something that's really basic, which isn't in the contract, and you don't bother charging for whatever reason because it might be $50, so you don't care about it. But then they might ask for something else that they think is just as minor, but then for whatever reason there might be a lot of detail in it or something that makes it expensive. So it could be $1,500. So in their eyes, it might be the exact same thing, but obviously in your eyes and your wallet, it's a lot different. So you're going to charge for one or not the other. So that's why you just want to communicate. Like even if you can do something for free as a variation, just put that in an email or a text message as well, just saying in regards to moving this tree from this point A to point B, we won't charge you for that on this occasion. And it's good to get them to reply to the email as well. Definitely if it's a cost. So get them to reply to you before you do it. If you're going to do a variation, then you've sent them an email to confirm. Jade from TA Turf Guru said, "What does your average day look like, and what time do you leave and get home?" There are some average days, like the average day of the week, but because Mondays and Tuesdays I pick up my kids from school, so what I do during the day is based off having to finish early to go and do that. So I'll have to finish usually about 2:00, so that I'll go and swap a truck over with my wife's car because I haven't got enough seats in my car, and then go and get them. So Mondays and Tuesdays I'll go and pick them up and then go and swap the truck and car over again after I've dropped the kids off at home. So my wife, because she can't drive a truck home, so it's a bit of driving around on Mondays and Tuesdays, and I'll end up getting home about 4:30, and then I'll do some office work from them. So I try and, I've been wanting to do office work on the weekends, but then when the weekend comes around, I can't be bothered. So I just think to myself, well, I've got Monday and Tuesday afternoon, I can do it then. So that's when I'm doing a bit of office work. And some days, this week, I came home before, so I could come home around lunchtime, so I can do a little bit of office work before I go and get the kids. But every morning I'll get up at 5:30 in the morning. The plan was so I could do a little bit of yoga or workout and do a bit of work a bit of office work before we start work. I've been getting up at 5:30 every morning, but haven't been doing much of the aforementioned things I was hoping to do. Did do some squats the other day, and that was good. So my quads were burning. I was doing some single leg squats, so the quads were burning for the week. So that's a nice pain to have. I like that. So I'll get back into them again this week. So yeah, as winter's coming around, last year my knees really struggled in winter, so trying to do a lot of work on my legs. So we're in a 2-story house now as well, so I've got to go up and down stairs, but that might also help. But yeah, looking to try and be proactive on looking after my body as we head into winter. But yeah, the other days, so then we'll meet at the shed at 7:30. So sometimes I might leave earlier and go and pick something up or start loading up the utes or truck. But yeah, we all meet at the shed and then go to the job from there. And then, yeah, it just varies. So Mondays and Tuesdays I leave early, but the other days of the week, I'll quite often have to come home to do a podcast. So I'll try and do them around 4:30, 5:00. But other than that, I'll try and finish around about 4:00 so that then I can drive around and pick things up for the next day. So I'll go and get some timber and have that in the truck ready to go or whatever we need. And yeah, go to the supermarket, cook tea, and then the end of most nights I'll go in the office and do a bit more work as well. But I find I'm a lot more productive in the morning than at night doing office work. So that's one of the reasons I like to get up early. But also, that just shows how unproductive I can be at night if I'm not doing it in the morning. But yeah, there's no 2 days are the same, just like landscaping. Malcolm from Bridgescapes said, "What do you think the future holds for the landscaping industry?" I think there's a pretty positive future for it, based on the trends that I think are coming in. That's only going to be a good thing if people are being more sustainable. Because I think I've said it before, I've always been amazed at just the amount of materials that just come out of the ground that we use for landscaping, like crushed rock and all sorts of soils and stuff and sands, toppings. It's always blown me away how there's just seemingly an unlimited amount, but there's not an unlimited amount. So recycling a lot more, I think, helps the future of landscaping. But with the longer term future, I reckon, like a lot of people will be saying that their jobs are safe and AI and VR is not going to be an issue. But I reckon eventually there'll be like VR headsets that people will just be putting on, and you go out into your backyard where there's nothing there, but you'll be able to, you know, everyone you'll have friends around, and you'll all put on a headset, and you'll all be in the same place. And there'll be certain things that make it feel warmer if you want it to feel warm or whatever. There'll be noises like the ocean as well, so it'll sort of feel like it there. This is going to be 20 years down the track, I'd say, but that's where I reckon landscaping will go. So there won't be as much spent in real time backyards. It'll all sort of be virtual, and that's what I reckon it will be. But that's a fair bit after I've gone from the industry, I would say. But I've seen people starting to do designs in VR, the virtual reality. But it's certainly, like, a lot of people aren't too keen on paying for 3D. So I'd imagine the VR is going to be hell of a lot more expensive than that. But pretty cool to see that. But that's what I reckon the future holds for that. The last question is from Anonymous as well. Now, this just came through. I didn't know if it was going to be. It was for the podcast. It just came in during the week, so I just chucked it in and said it's from Anonymous. But what brand of waterproof gear do you wear or recommend to keep dry in downpours? So I'm very similar to the Wicked Witch of the West from The Wizard of Oz. So if I get wet, I'll melt. So you don't want that to happen. So I don't work in the rain at all. So I don't have any wet weather gear. Every now and then, like, I've had some in the past. I can't remember what we did it for, but we had to get some stuff done. But yeah, I absolutely hate working in the rain. So do it as little as possible. Luckily, we weren't in New South Wales last year where they had like 3 meters of rain in a year. So I think our average is about 600 mil, and we might have had that last year, I think. But yeah, not a fan of it at all. Even overnight turns the ground into mud. So just, yeah, not a good thing. But I would imagine because another thing I hate about it is when you're wearing these jackets and you're still trying to work, you end up getting sweaty because you've got all these clothes on. So it just makes you just get wet from it anyway, even though you've got these clothes on when you're trying to stay dry. So yeah, it's just you can tell I'm not a fan, just not at all. But I did have one other question about the letterbox. So I put up a poll during the week asking people whether I should do, because I'm doing my letterbox, and it's going to be a concrete number 5 or the word 5. And there's a lot of people probably got confused with what I meant by that. So a lot of people thought I was just doing a big, like, rectangle slab of concrete, not a slab, but a vertical bit of in situ concrete, and I was going to put an imprint or it could be imprint of the word or number 5, but I'm actually going to be making the letterbox as a number. So it'll be a big concrete number 5 or the word 5 made out of concrete. So I think there's about 220. I don't know what the word is. 220 people who voted on the poll. I think 20 of them were just wanting to see the results, and then there's I think 126 said they wanted to see the word 5, and 74, if my maths is correct, said the number. So the word 5 is what I was initially going to go with, but then I was thinking, it's going to be a bit big because when you got the letters, because I don't know, you probably have to do them maybe 800 mil high, and then there's 4 words in there. So yeah, I thought it might be a bit big, but then I thought, the house is 2-story, so it's a big house, and it's got a big olive tree that you may have seen in there as well in the front yard. So maybe the scale of the letterbox would work perfectly. So that's what it will probably be. So I'll probably pour the footing of it this week, so then I can start doing the form work, because I'm pretty excited. And then I just got to work out whether I do all capitals or do lowercase for the word, because like obviously all capitals is going to be a lot easier, but I like a challenge as well. So having the curves of the F and the E, I don't think I'd get fancy and put a little tick at the end of the V, but yeah, that's something. Maybe I could just do a capital F and then a small E, so it's got enough challenge in there, but the F can be rectangular, so that I can put the actual letterbox part inside the F. That sounds like a good idea. I think I've worked it out. That's the last question for this week. So thank you very much again to everyone who submitted one. I put the question box up a bit late this week, so I didn't have a lot, but still had some good quality questions in there. So I appreciate everyone who's done that. Who's coming out on the podcast this week? I've got another stonemason. I've got Tim Volant from Tim Volant Stonemason. So that was a pretty cool chat as well. So quite a deep thinker and a perfectionist at what he does. So that'll be a good one to listen to. And then I've already done 2 more recordings. So I've got Simon from Land Art Landscapes the following week. And then one of the most enjoyable chats I've had with Brady from Boutique Timeless Landscapes in WA coming out the following week. So that was just ridiculously fun chatting to him. I was smiling and laughing the whole time. So, and then when I was chatting with Simon from Land Art Landscapes, like I was just in heaven talking about the ins and outs of the business, the way they run things. So yeah, so 3 really good episodes coming up, and still looking to book more. And so still loving doing the podcast, and thank you very much for everyone who gets involved. We'll see you next week.